Of the various members of the healing church that we encounter in Bloodborne, it's the hunters and clerics that take center stage in the gameplay and lore. Our epic confrontations with Amelia, Lawrence, and Ludwig leave a permanent impression on us. But compared to these prominent characters, and even the everyday church hunters that we encounter throughout the game, we receive scant information about a supporting segment of the church, the Blood Saints. In this episode of Bite-Sized Bloodborne, we'll make the rounds through this often overlooked wing of the healing church and examine how the humble blood saints play a surprisingly significant role in Bloodborne's medical metaphor. What little information we receive about the blood saints comes from 2 items and a small collection of dialogues with 2 female characters, Adella and Adeline. Understandably, most of the attention that the lore community has paid to the Blood Saints has targeted their role as vessels or harborers of special blood. There remains a great deal of uncertainty as to how and why these women have such unique and valuable blood. And there's a great deal of debate and speculation about how the church cultivates blood using the Blood Saints. But that's not particularly important for our understanding of the Blood Saints' role in the medical metaphor. For that, we can rely on a variety of other small but meaningful details of the Blood Saints and their parent organization. As its name overtly indicates, the Healing Church was designed by From Software to be a fusion of religion and medicine. It's an institution with stark Christian overtones and symbols, yet one devoted to the science of healing. We see numerous examples of this dichotomy, perhaps none more clearly than the church hunters, who are draped in their priest-like black and white garments and holy shawls. But as we saw in part 6 of my series, An Agony of Effort, The True Story of Bloodborne, the increasing complexity in the design of the church hunter attire sets mirrors the evolution of medical attire in the 1800s. In real life, as medical and surgical science became more advanced, the attire of doctors and surgeons shifted from all black to all white, just like the basic church hunters wear black while the more sophisticated segment of church hunters wears white. We see this in the item descriptions, where the black church hunters are called elementary doctors who practice a sort of preventative medicine, whereas the superior white church hunters are called doctors and specialists. Recognizing the fundamental dichotomy of religion and medicine in the healing church allows us to form a basic idea about what the Blood Saints represent. Because the Blood Saints are subordinate to the doctor-like church hunters, and because the Blood Saints, we can assume, are all female, there's reason to believe that these saintly figures were inspired by the real-life nurses of the 18th and 19th centuries. Although they're called Blood Saints, these figures, according to the Blood of Adella item, are the nuns of the healing church. This detail is small but exceptionally important. While referring to blood saints as nuns obviously gives them a religious connotation and centers them within the sacred hierarchy of the healing church, it ties these characters to the game's medical metaphor. Monastic nuns and other sisters of religious orders were responsible for creating the nursing profession as we know it today, and for hundreds of years, these women of the cloth played a more significant role in caring for the sick and dying than many of the best educated physicians of the time. Scholars of the history of nursing generally credit the Daughters of Charity of St. Vincent de Paul, a religious order in France, as the originators of the nursing profession. Formed in the early 1600s, the Daughters of Charity were unlike the traditional Catholic nuns who vowed to live a life of poverty and celibacy within a convent. The Daughters of Charity were deemed sisters of a religious order who took individual vows to care for the poor. Their service as religious sisters included receiving instruction in divinity and how to care for the ill and infirm. In the 1800s, the group would establish a number of community hospitals and provide in-home visits to the sick in more than 24 parishes across France. The popularity of the Daughters of Charity grew rapidly, and over the following decades, pockets of the organization sprang up across Europe, North America, and the United Kingdom. The value of nursing nuns reached its pinnacle in the mid-1800s during armed conflicts on 2 sides of the Atlantic. During the U.S. Civil War of the 1860s, more than 600 nursing nuns and sisters cared for wounded Union and Confederate soldiers. This came less than a decade after Florence Nightingale, the matriarch of modern nursing, along with her team of several dozen nursing sisters, tended to hundreds of wounded British soldiers in Istanbul during the Crimean War. Nuns were so closely associated with nursing that even in the late 1800s, after nursing became a professional trade with no religious affiliation, it was still common to refer to nurses throughout the English-speaking world as sister. The title of Sister Adella, a subservient figure to the hunter-doctors of the Healing Church, doesn't seem like it's based only on the religious aspects of the character. It seems like a dual reference to her status as a woman of the church and a metaphor for Victorian-era nurses. It's also quite possible that the dialogue muttered by the heavily bandaged huntsman's minion enemies, "So cold, dear sister," is something a pauper or a hospital patient would say to a passing nurse, hoping for aid, comfort, or warmth. As we noted at the start of the episode, the signature aspect of the blood saints is their harboring of special blood. Adella and Adeline, a current and a former nun of the Healing Church, give the player character their blood in an act of charity and gratitude. Why would From Software design the blood saints, these nuns of the Healing Church, as figures who do this, who give their own blood to the player character? This wasn't by accident. The nursing nuns and sisters of the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries were often providing basic care to the destitute in an act of charity, as the name Daughters of Charity would attest. This might explain why, as Last Protagonist noted in his Japanese retranslations, the blood saints in the original Japanese are said to give alms of blood, the term alms being historically associated with religious-based charitable giving. Numerous works of Renaissance art depict the act of almsgiving by saints, giving money or sustenance to the needy. Arukimanya also notes in his breakdown of the blood of Adella that the original Japanese text strongly emphasizes that the blood of Adella is a blood offering, given willingly, which separates this item from most other blood consumables in the game. We're supposed to see the blood saints as charitable figures. But let's look closer at the act itself. In Christian theology, the giving of one's blood can be seen as symbolic of Christ's sacrifice to ensure the spiritual salvation of humanity. But as early as the 14th century, the act of giving one's blood became a symbol of charity, as depicted in the art, bestiaries, and architecture of the medieval and Renaissance eras, primarily taking the form of the pelican, of all things. According to various ancient legends, the pelican was said to spear its own breast with its beak, using its blood either to feed its young during times of scarcity, or even to bring its dead chicks back to life. The spilling of its own blood symbolizes self-sacrifice and the power of divine blood in resurrection. But the pelican ultimately became symbolic of the Eucharist, meaning the bread and wine representing the body and blood of Christ that Christians consume in remembrance of Christ's sacrifice. The Eucharist is consumed as part of the religious act of communion. As we've already noted, in Bloodborne, just like the pelican of Christian iconography, blood saints give their own blood to the player character in an act of charity. Furthermore, the blood of Adella item description states, the mere chance of being treated with their blood, meaning the blood saints, lends legitimacy to the Healing Church and communion. While we've established that the act of giving one's blood connects the blood saints to a Christian symbol of charity, what does this pelican symbolism have to do with the blood saints being a metaphor for nurses? Throughout my series, An Agony of Effort, The True Story of Bloodborne, I argued that the Healing Church was based upon the Royal Infirmary of Edinburgh, one of the leading hospitals of the Victorian era and a pioneering institution of surgery. The Royal Infirmary of Edinburgh Nurse Training School was founded in 1872, and over the course of the next several decades, it trained hundreds of women who would go on to accept nursing positions around the world. The training program would eventually become the Royal Infirmary of Edinburgh School of Nursing, and beginning in 1917, women who completed their nursing education at the infirmary were given a badge in honor of their achievement. It displays the Pelican, feeding her young with her own blood. The Pelican also became part of the Royal Infirmary's coat of arms. The infirmary's magazine for nurses became known as the Pelican, and the name of the professional organization for nurses there would be called the Pelican Nurses League. The Royal Infirmary archives described the decision to adopt the Pelican name and symbol, stating, "The pelican is an ancient symbol of charity and sacrifice, and is shown on the badge as sitting on its nest, plucking its breast to feed its young with its own blood, symbolizing the nurse's dedication to the service of others." By giving us her own blood, Sister Adella, a nun of the Healing Church, is engaging in an act that for hundreds of years was a symbol of religious charity that later became synonymous with nursing. It's the perfect fusion of religion and healing that we would expect of the Healing Church. And it's yet another strong piece of evidence that Bloodborne is telling us a clandestine story about medicine of a bygone era. Thanks for watching.